Hi, this is Kurt Johnson, doing something different with a Mindful Monday. I'm doing my first podcast with my friend Drew Scott Perlman. Drew's a filmmaker, he's an author, and he's also a functional medicine practitioner. So, with these Mindful Mondays, they're all about, life is choice and that we can choose to be happy. Should we choose to be happy? Life is choice. And mainly it's about, making a stress-free week and starting it out on Monday. So I'd like to introduce you to my friend Drew. Drew, welcome to my first show.
Kurt, it is an honor to be with you. We've known each other now for a few years since we met at an institute in Western Massachusetts, the Kripalu Institute, for a Bruce Lipton workshop. And Kurt and I met there, and we hit it off, and we've stayed in touch ever since. And it's awesome. It's great to talk to you.
That's awesome. I mean, what a great weekend we had too. And then we also met, Michelin Nader and Dr. uh, Krishna Beagle, and we actually, so it was a great weekend, and it was
And just a lot of like-minded people. So Kurt and I, just we're of the same mind in terms of healing and energy and nutrition and all that good stuff. And we're just trying to spread the word out to as many people as possible, which I know is what Mindful Mondays. When I heard you doing the Mindful Mondays and now doing the Mindful Monday podcast, um, I think people are just going to eat it up because we need it, and especially we need it now. I mean, in the middle of this pandemic, of course, but we needed it before the pandemic. Now we're in the pandemic. We need it, and we're going to need it after the pandemic. So,
yeah.
Mindful Mondays is here to stay. I know, Kurt. It's gonna. I'm very excited for you.
So Drew, I'd like to learn, get our audience to learn a little bit more about you, like your younger years and how you grew up and how you actually got into to filming, and I, so
Okay. Well,
hear your story.
yeah, I mean, so when I was a first of all, I just want to know that just everybody to know I do some functional medicine work with people individually as a functional medicine health coach. So I try to get them to focus on diet, try to focus on breathing, all the different layers of health. Um, but as a kid, I was, I ate lots of fast food. I was overweight. So I definitely didn't live this way my whole life. But so yeah, so I started as a filmmaker about, I don't know, about 15, 20 years ago, and I made an action movie. I made an animated crazy comedy animated show. But I never was totally, even though I enjoyed it, I was still on the side. I was reading books on nutrition, and I've always been fascinated by health and cutting edge healthy living science. And I've always been fascinated by like the martial arts and meditation and all these different things. So even though I was making these movies, I didn't feel like my heart was totally in it. So then, really about 10 years ago, I shifted gears and I started making some documentaries. And I made a documentary, which you can see behind me right here, The Great Lesson, which literally just started out, I just wanted to interview a few people that I had been reading their books, and I just had all these questions. And so I set up an interview with Bruce Lipton. I set up an interview with some of these folks, and that led to this movie. And then that led me down a path to making a movie on nutrition, and then another one on nutrition, and here we go. But again, it wasn't always that way. It just sort of happened.
And what was crazy was I had bought the Great Lessons like when it first came out, not even knowing you, and then also I had bought the Healing Effect, which was one, and it was on the Food Matters Network, which is now Gaia. It's still there, but it was one of the most viewed movies of the thousands that they had. I was just, and then to meet you in person at Capallo, it's like, no, that can't be you. It's cool, it's crazy, and Fuel Your Health just came out. I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago, was it?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I made the healing effect was really it's almost like about 8 years old now, and that got into a plant-based diet, eating more plants and eating more, vegetables and antioxidant-rich foods. But then the next movie, Fuel Your Health, really dove into the gut,
Yeah,
because I just started to the more I learned, the more I researched, you begin to realize that really all health begins in the gut, and if the gut is unhealthy, um, frankly, it doesn't really matter what you eat because you're not going to be able to digest it and absorb it and get the nutrients from it. So that's why I felt that that's sort of been the evolution. That's why the next movie, Fuel Your Health, came out, because I wanted to get into the gut. And then so now I'm also working on a new project, and we're really getting deep into breathing,
oh,
because the realization is, well, if your breathing isn't right, it doesn't matter, everything else doesn't really matter, so the breathing is so important. So just getting back to basics is
yeah.
really 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 important.
And I remember when Fuel Your Health first came out, and I was watching it, and I just asked you about diets and that. I had a friend that wasn't feeling good, and I wasn't, perfect health, and you were talking about the ancestral diet, going to a bone broth, and so I actually, Chef Sherry that cooks here at Shawbucks, I had her making a bone broth, and she was cooking for 24 hours, and I mean, it really took off last year. A lot of customers, and it just makes you feel calm. There's a very stress freeing, it puts you in a good mood, and I was surprised, you know what I mean, that something so simple
Yeah.
as a bone broth. I mean, it sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple to make, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? A lot of it is, Kurt, is just getting back to those old ways of cooking. So, like the way our ancestors, like nutrition and a lot of these principles doesn't have to be complicated. It's just about getting back to the ways of our ancestors. So, if if your great 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 grandmother was living during a pandemic, you know, what would she do? What would your great 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 grandfather do? Well, they wouldn't have access to all the drugs. They wouldn't have access to even all the supplements. They'd have to find it from food. They'd have to find it from the way they were living. And like a really simple way for nourishing the body, healing the gut is, like meat stock. And I know it sounds or bone broth. And instead of, you cook that chicken or whatever it is that you're making, instead of taking the liquid that you've cooked it in and dumping it down the sink, you save it, because so many of the minerals and the trace minerals and the amino acids and all of these really nourishing things are actually in that liquid. And so it's one of the most nourishing things you could do to really improve your immune system, heal your gut. And yeah, so I mean, so that's like, so again, getting back to these old ways of our ancestors, and just simply asking, what would they do? What would they eat? Um,
Yeah,
am I about to put something in my mouth that my great great grandmother wouldn't even know what it is, like some boxed cereal from like from the supermarket? She's looking at this, she wouldn't even know what this thing is. So that's probably not what you want
your
to be
daddy
eating.
didn't know what it was either, just like ours doesn't. It's fake. We don't need,
Totally, totally.
and Drew, you do your own podcast too. I've watched a number of them, and it's at drewperlman.com. You can find them there, right?
Yep, Drew, exactly, yeah.
And so I watched the one with Dr. Cowan, and he's into the same similar things that you and I are, as a practicing doctor, and he gardens and he gets his hands dirty, and he always talks about how important it is to get your hands dirty, because there's a whole ecosystem living on your hands that you need. And we're constantly spraying them now, and losing that natural healing. You got to be exposed to these things to stay in good health. And how do you do that today when you walk into your doctor's office and they're spraying your hands with all these chemicals, and you know what I mean? And here you
I
listen to
know.
a functional medicine type of doctor, and he's like, no, you got to go out in the woods and you got to get dirty and you got to garden, and you want to build that health of the biodome of your hands, not just your gut. And it's just a
Yeah,
strange world we're living in, where we're being told to do the opposite. I don't know if I'm
I
off base
know.
or not, but if you could help me
Yeah.
here, I'm more or less trying to ask a question, not make a statement. But
No,
if,
that's okay. That's good. That's good. I mean, Kurt, that's really important because it seems like right now we have two totally different approaches to life. And when I made that last movie, Fuel Your Health, I sometimes I even described it as sort of the anti-hand sanitizer movie, because it was all about this notion that we have to get dirty. And then, and when I say get dirty, I mean, just have some contact with nature, whether that's getting dirty by walking in the, playing in the dirt, playing on the grass, going for a walk in the woods. But we have to have some connection with nature. And so that right now, in the middle of this pandemic, there's just, you referenced the Tom Cowan interview. Um, there is this virus of fear, and there's just incredible levels of fear. And one of the ways that is coming to the surface is a fear of germs. And germs, what are germs? Germs is just sort of really the derogatory word we use for microbes. So when we talk about bacteria, we talk about viruses, we talk about, fungi, yeast, we talk about all these little microorganisms, and we call them germs as like something negative. And we have germaphobes, and there's people that are afraid of germs, and they're putting, you know,
they're actually our friends.
yeah, they're
So
they're our
we have
friends, and
more
also we're
bacteria, right, in our ecosystem of our body than we do cells. We got like 50 trillion cells, and we've got twice as many bacteria, I think, if that's, and twice as many DNA from bacteria than we do actually our own cells. Is that right?
yeah. I mean, many people even think almost 10 times, like 10 to 1, they outnumber us. So so if we have like 50 trillion
Yeah.
cells, 10 times that amount
And you
of
want to keep them
microbes.
balanced. You really don't want to kill them. You got to keep the right amounts.
Yeah, yeah, bacteria, even viruses. I mean, 10, they say 8 to 10% of our human genome comes from viruses.
Wow.
So our genes come 10 to 8 to 10% come from viruses. A third come from bacteria. So we are an ecosystem of
Yeah.
these microbes. We need to, declaring war on them and trying to kill everything, kill every germ is really just killing ourselves, because we are loaded with this thing. We have more bacteria, we have more microbes in our mouth than there are people on the planet. So
That's
just
crazy.
think about that for a second.
And I don't think people can really wrap their head on how small a coronavirus is. I mean, it's so small you have to use an electric microscope to actually see it. And I think it's like 3 times smaller than bacteria, isn't it? Or I don't know the.
Viruses, yeah, viruses are even, yeah, usually considered smaller. I mean, they're completely microscopic,
Yeah,
which is why, the notion of a mask.
I know.
As someone said to me, well, not didn't say to me, but I've heard someone say this. It's, to be quite honest, wearing a mask is like trying to stop a mosquito with a chain link fence.
Yeah, I think Tom used that.
Maybe Tom said it.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, and it's baffling. It's like mixing sand and water, thinking the sand's going to hold the water back from going through a strainer.
Yeah.
I don't know. and I know I'll piss, well, some people, but they just don't want to change their beliefs. And it's hard to really get good science when you're trusting scientists, but it's really not, science has its own true way of testing itself, and to be able to repeat. And, when I hear of all these cases, oh, more cases of corona, which is basic. I mean, honestly, I think it is the flu, according to the people I listen to. And so you get all these flu cases, and they're saying, oh, it's way up, way up. But they're really, what are they comparing it to? You know what I mean? Because we don't have any data yet. We're just gathering. So to put people in the state of shock and awe that something's going rapid, I mean, we just started testing it, and I apparently the guy that invented the device we're testing doesn't believe it works for COVID, or says it wouldn't. So I mean, there's so much
Right.
hysteria that you don't know truth or not. But I mean, common sense at some point's got to prevail what's being broadcast, you know?
Well, it's true, Kurt, and I mean, and all of this is related again, going back to fear, is that our friend Bruce Lipton would tell us that fear is sort of the ultimate way to shut down the immune system.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, when people are afraid, when there's like widespread fear, um, that is going to suppress your immune system and make you much more vulnerable to not just a virus, but anything.
And 90% of illness, I've heard it over and over, is attributed to stress, and what is stress? It's simply a fear of something. You're resisting something, you're afraid. And
Right.
90% of chronic illness, is attributed to that. And I pay attention to those things because I've survived a few things in my life. And,
Oh,
so it's that stress is something that, you really need to pay attention to and resolve. It's not just treating the symptom of fear. You got to find out where the source is, and that's where the answers seem to be. And it seems like functional medicine takes that approach. Most
absolutely.
most of the time, you're getting treated symptoms, whether you're, diabetic or high blood pressure or anything, where you learn to breathe right, you learn to eat right, and you take it into your own responsibility, and not relying on a magic pill or someone outside of yourself to, you know, take care of yourself. It's up to you.
Huge, huge. It is. You're absolutely having that shift to recognize that, it has to begin with this idea that you are powerful, that you have power. You're powerful, and that the forces around you, the forces in the media, the forces on your phone, everything is trying to generate fear, because fear is going to help you. It's going to sell more advertisements. It's going to get you to buy drugs. It's going to get you to buy all kind of stuff. So fear definitely sells, and everything in the world is designed to make you fearful. And by default, if you're fearful all the time, you give away your power. You lose your power. But you have to recognize you are powerful. And I think one of the biggest things people can do that are high stress. I mean, I've been feeling the stress lately too. I mean, it's palpable.
Yeah.
It's real. It's everywhere. But to have some practices that you do every day. For me, I think one of the big ones is having a breathing practice, right? We breathe, right? We all breathe thousands of breaths a day,
Yeah.
but actually having a practice, because breathing is sort of the interface. It's the way to get a handle, get the controls of your immune system back, or well, your immune system, but also your nervous system. That's what I meant to say. So if you want to take control of your nervous system, high stress, sympathetic nervous system, or low stress, if you want to get the controls back, the interface for doing that is the breathing. It's so powerful for thousands and thousands of years. So I think one of the best things people can do that are really struggling with stress is to have a breathing is to get a breathing practice together. And we can go over a few that I have found really helpful,
Yeah.
but
No,
I
I'd
think that's
love to hear
huge.
that, and I was going to ask you, this leads into something I wanted to talk to you about, because I've had a morning routine now for probably 15 years, which involves meditating, breathing, now that I've follow Wim Hof a little bit. I take a cold shower every day, but it is for me, it's so important to have a morning routine. And it takes me a half an hour to an hour. I get up early just so I can have that time to kind of set my compass for the day, that it's set in the right course. And then when I have interruptions in the day, I can find a couple quick minutes to, do like an EF tapping session, or just focus on just breathing in and out, or box breathing, or, so if you could just, I'd like to hear what your morning routine is, and how you practice throughout your day when you get set off balance. What do
Absolutely.
you do?
Absolutely. So, a lot of these breathing practices that you learn about, like Wim Hof, there's another really good one from the Art of Living Foundation. It's called Sudarshan Kriya. It's like an ancient form of breathing. Um, One of the things that you see, some similarities, is that a lot of these breathing practices, they're very stimulating. So you do a lot of rapid breathing, and
Like,
then you slow it down,
yeah,
and then you speed it up, and you slow it down. And what in a sense what you're learning is, you're by speeding it up and stimulating your nervous system, you're kind of learning how to work the controls. You're learning how to trigger your stress response, because certain times we do need to be stressed. We do, if we're running, if we're running for our lives, right? We do that. Then it's okay to be stressed, but for the most part, we're not running for our lives. So we learn how to stress, so we can learn how to be unstressed and to de-stress. So in a lot of these practices that have really been very powerful for people, they show people how to work those controls. And part of it is really ramping yourself up to then calm yourself down, ramping yourself up to calm you down. And then you find that throughout the day, you're a bit more calmer.
right.
So that's a big commonality between a lot of these breathing practices, is, stimulating and then calming down. Now, when I'm breathing, Kurt, a lot of the another big thing that you really want to do is, you want to breathe through your nose, particularly on the inhale. But you want to be breathing through your nose, because it's sort of the ultimate. That's how we're designed to breathe.
Yeah,
And
I've heard breathing out of the mouth is just something that's recently, like, that we've been doing as a species. Like normally, like even when we would run 500, 1,000 years ago, it would be in and out breaths through your nose mainly. Is that true?
yeah, yeah. Well, we're so many of the health issues. I mean, our structure of our faces, our skeletons, our skulls have changed tremendously from our ancient ancestors. I mean, they had wider faces, jaws, bigger sinus cavities, and so they were really able to get in more air, and they were able to breathe in through the nose a little bit easier. But nowadays we have more narrow faces, due to the way, not only the way we're breathing, but also the way we're eating. Like, because we eat a lot of processed foods, we're not doing a lot of chewing, right? Like our ancient ancestors had to chew roots and things that were maybe a bit more difficult to chew. Nowadays, all this processed crap is just, it's like you can just sort of like, you don't really have to chew much anymore.
Yeah.
So you look at the skulls of our ancient ancestors; their faces were wider, and that affects our breathing. But again, one of the simplest things you can do is to just start breathing through your nose, because we're designed to breathe that way. The nose is a tremendous filter. So better than wearing a mask. You could
Yeah.
wear a mask if you want, but but you could also just breathe through your nose, because it's designed to filter out any sort of
And then it also
impurities.
learns what's in the environment too, so it knows what it's facing, right?
Yeah, 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 totally.
Back into your tonsils, and your tonsil read, that's why there's a big push, like for oral vaccines and that, over injecting and bypassing the tonsils. Is have you I, I've heard people talk on it. I'm not an expert, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure, Kurt. It's I'm sure it's all related in some way.
Yeah.
But but yeah, it's how we're designed to, it's how our system is designed. And the other thing about the nose breathing is when we breathe through our nose, we produce a lot more nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a powerful, it's like a vasodilator. It relaxes our blood vessels, so we can pump more oxygen. Blood pressure goes down. So this nitric oxide is produced when we're breathing through our nose. And the other thing about nitric oxide is it's a powerful killer of viruses. So it's a powerful killer of anything pathogenic. So we want to have more nitric oxide. So this comes from nose breathing. So there's all these incredible health benefits that come from nose breathing versus breathing through the mouth.
Yeah.
It's really just
Mouth
causes a
is
lot
mainly,
lot of damage.
breathing through the mouth, and I don't do it as often as the cold showers. But when I do meditate, I always focus on breathing in and out through my nose. And I've tried Kundalini yoga. I've done that, and I still do it a little bit. And that's an intense type of breathing. Uh,
Totally. That's a good one too. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Kurt. I mean, just
yeah, cool.
yeah, stimulating and stimulating the system, and just learning how to take those controls of the nervous system. But I would tell people, I would say, if for those of you who are looking for a breathing practice, do a little research out there. Look up Wim Hof, who the
Mine might
Iceman,
work for
the
you. There's
Iceman.
one size fits all. So there's going to be, a breathing technique that works for you more than likely, right?
Without question. Yeah, there's Wim Hof, there's the Art of Living, there's Transcendental Meditation, there's Heart Math Institute, the Institute of Heart Math. Learn some heart breathing. But I would say everybody. So you asked me about the morning routine. I'll do
Yeah.
some of the Wim Hof. I'll do some of the Wim Hof breathing in the morning. Very stimulating, energizing. Maybe go out in the snow, jump around in the snow, do a few jumping jacks. Um, could get that cold. My son the other day, he was taking pictures of me. I was like rolling around in the snow, because you get so energized by these breathing techniques. But then then I'll do a little heart math. Bring the hands to the heart, take some slow breaths in and out through the heart. Just breathing in. Um, but I highly recommend people just do a little research and experiment a little bit and try these out. But
And so you
they're
can find HeartMath at heartmath.org. And is there other websites that you can go to that you could name?
yeah,
Maybe
absolutely. So
you probably got some on your website as well.
yeah, well, the good thing, so on the podcast that I do, my name, drewperlman.com. Anyways, I interviewed the guy who is in charge, who's the research director of Heart Math. So you could learn a little bit more there, and you can also just go to Heart Math Institute as well. I've
It's
also talked to some people who do the Art of Living. It's called Sudarshan Kriya, and it's another very invigorating breathing practice. And you could just go to the artofliving.org. I talked to a guy who does transcendental meditation, so you could go to the David Lynch Foundation to learn about TM. And then, yeah, Heart Math is a great one. Wim Hof is a great one. So, yeah, if you Google some of these, you'll find them. And, you can always ask Kurt, and you can always ask me, feel free, if you need any more background on any of this stuff. But the, the best first step, I think, bar none, even before, look, food is important, exercise is important, but you have to get the breathing right. And I think that, to me, that's the first step. I really do.
great information. You're always a
My-
wealth of information, Drew. I just love hanging out and being able to talk to us.
well, I feel the same way about you, Kurt. We just kind of feed off of each other.
Yeah. And so, Drew, the other thing that what was I going to ask you about was How soon would your movie be coming out, your new one on breathing, and have you titled it yet? And
Well, so last summer we started working on a new project, and we interviewed some really cool people, and we started it last summer, and then we got a few interviews done,
oh,
and then boom, the pandemic hit. So I had like about three of them that were canceled. Actually, a bunch of them that were canceled. So yeah, so we'll get back into it. But
yeah,
right now, I'm just having fun doing the podcast. I'm having fun being on your podcast. And but we'll get, there's no
yeah.
official title yet for it, but I assume
This good
probably
information,
next summer.
like here on podcast, is very helpful too. Like you just shared with us, you know.
Absolutely. Podcasts are great for just we need so sort of the tagline for the show that I'm doing is your antidote, and I assume this is going to be the same for yours too, Kurt. It's your antidote to the fear, the noise, and the talking heads in the news, because we need an antidote. If you're just getting all your, if you're staring at your phone all day here, and you're reading all the news, you're in trouble because that's all fear based. So we need some shows that are an antidote to the fear, and that's what Mindful Monday show is going to be all about. That's what the Drew Pearlman show is all about. So we need more of these shows because we need an antidote to all of this crap that's out there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Drew. And you know, Drew, you also do yoga, right? And you do lessons online or classes you hold online.
Yeah, I've been doing more of that lately. So I teach a online for those who want to dive a bit more into the breathing, and I'm happy to guide people through this. I have a meditation class on usually it's on Wednesdays, and we do it over Zoom. And I'll teach people different breathing practices. We will eventually get into some of like the Wim Hof, but we do different breathing practices. We do some heart math techniques. We do some just really trying to expand the lung capacity. So different breathing techniques. I also teach an online yoga, and in January, I'm going to start teaching some online nutrition classes for people that want to learn how to boost their immune system and just really strengthen themselves so they're not in so much fear. Really strengthen with a lot of eating techniques and food techniques and those kind of things. So that's coming soon.
We've been talking about fear, and you know, it wreaks such havoc. I mean, back, you know, 100, 200 years ago, you're walking in the woods, you got to be on edge. And I mean, we were designed that way. And now we're really not in, it's not necessary to be in the state of fear with all the different chemicals that get pumped through the body, you know,
No
and
question.
you know, what kind of havoc and what chemicals get produced when you're in fear, you know, that we've heard Bruce talk about, but I'd like to hear it from a functional medicine, you know, coach type of.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing is, it's all about like chronic stress. So stress is normal. We could be stressed. You're doing your podcast here, so you might be a little stressed, but that's okay because it's giving you some adrenaline. It's giving you maybe a little bit of cortisol. And some stress hormones, and that's keeping you alert. That's keeping you focused. It's keeping you maybe a little bit more energized. That's fine. And again, a lot of these breathing techniques will also bring you into that stress state because you're
Yeah.
gonna you're gonna stress yourself out a little bit. Short-term stress is fine. It's long-term chronic stress. So if you're out there and you're listening, and you're stressed while you're doing some invigorating, martial arts or yoga or whatever, and you're getting a little stressed, worked up, that's okay if it's short term. But if you're stressed when you're driving to work, if you're stressed at work, if you're stressed when you go home, if you're stressed at night, then it becomes a problem. Then it becomes destructive because these stress hormones specifically will shut down your immune system. They'll make it harder to fall asleep. They'll make it harder for you to heal. and you're going to run the risk of just, catching more viruses, catching more flus and colds and this and that. So you're just when you're in a it's called fight or flight for a reason.
Yeah,
It's meant to be like short term, but
not 24.
you don't want it to be all the time.
Yeah, no, that's great. Drew, I don't know if there was anything else we could, we covered a lot of material. I mean, it was really fun. I'm not even sure how long we've been on this call, but
Yeah,
it's been great, and
this has been awesome, Kurt. And I would just tell people, one thing that I tell people all the time is just, in your garage, you probably have a toolbox, or maybe in your house or something. But I think it's important to have a healing toolbox too. So I like to tell people that it's great to have a toolbox that you can use to fix something in your house or your car or whatever, but also to have a toolbox that you can use to fix you, um, to fix your mind, to fix your emotions. And so Kurt and I have talked a lot about breathing. So breathing is a huge one. Nutrition is a big one. We talk about the tapping, but having a few tools in that toolbox that you can use. And if you don't have any tools in that toolbox right now, well, that's why you need to be listening to Mindful Mondays
and Perlman,
or the Drew Perlman Show.
yes,
Um, and you need to seek them out. You need to, just like this, just like people out there might take the time to learn how to, to learn a hobby. You want to have a few skills that you can use to fix yourself as well. So just, listening to those podcasts, watching those videos, and just taking the time to get some to build your healing toolbox is important.
I think it's so cool just to think to just breathe. I mean, it's that simple. Like, even no matter how stressed and crazy your life is or how much anxiety you feel, just to breathe even in and out and just focus on that. It's kind of like a reset, feeling
Totally.
cool air in and out of your nose, and just breathe. I mean, I think you nailed it right there. I mean, that's huge to it's the simplest we can. There's always air available, hopefully, and
Yeah,
and
hopefully.
and just to breathe. I mean, that's so key.
It is, and preferably breathe through your nose.
Yeah,
Anybody listening that has a mask on right now, and there might be someone listening that has a mask on. Um,
or
I
two.
interviewed someone on my show a few days ago, and he's a breathing expert too. And he was just saying one of the best things, if you have the mask on, even still, just try to breathe in through your nose. Practice that. If you can practice that, whether you have a mask on or no mask on, just practice breathing in through your nose and then breathing out really however you want. You could breathe out through your nose or your mouth, it doesn't really matter, but breathing in through your nose. And then when you breathe out, try to just breathe out slowly. It takes practice. It's not like you show up and you get this right away. You have to be willing to practice this. So if you say, okay, every morning, Kurt has his morning routine, I have my morning routine. Every morning, even just take 5 breaths, then go to 10 breaths, then do it for a minute, then do it for 2 minutes, then maybe do it to 5 minutes, and just practice it over time. You'll see huge, huge benefits.
This is awesome. Drew. Thank you so much for your time in doing this, and I'd love to have
Oh,
a regular guest, or maybe at some point,
oh,
do
I
different
love it.
things with it.
Do it. Let's do this every day, Kurt.
I
Every
know
day.
I
Check
could.
in. Mindful Tuesday, Wednesday. No, I'll do it whenever you want.
More
Absolutely. We'll come
guests.
back, and I love it. It's always great to talk to you. There's no question about it.
I mean, my mindful Mondays, the key is to you can't be happy all week if you don't start on Monday. So if you choose to be happy, life is choice. And a lot of times in life, it's the way you feel kind of dominates the way you want to feel. And sometimes just focusing on breath or just doing something simple to move forward. And a lot of my topics are love and fear create movement, and they impact us. But in the healthcare system, that's your sympathetic and parasympathetic. And When you're in the parasympathetic, you're going to be a better athlete. You're playing to win. You're not playing not to lose. And it's just a whole realm of just trying to wrap your head around things and live a simpler, easier life. So,
Amen. You know, like you said, just keep it simple. Keep it simple. Like
yeah,
you said, those two words,
yeah,
just breathe. And when I interviewed a guy the other day, he said, I said, you know, I said, do you have any tips? He was a breathing expert. I said, do you have any tips? And he was kind of joking, half joking when he said, he's like, yeah. He's like, Drew, he's like, just shut your mouth.
breathe through your nose.
and and I thought it was like, and breathe through your nose. So maybe those are just two little simple things people can remember. You know, easy. Just breathe. Shut your mouth. Try to breathe
Yeah,
through your nose. And if you can do that, as Kurt said, little steps, baby steps. Those won't be baby steps too long. Those are going to be big steps if you keep doing it and stick with it.
and we talked about food earlier, and one thing I was going to mention, I first Forks Over Knives documentary that got me involved in my journey of food and trying to eat more of a plant based, but I still eat meats and whatnot. And then I discovered your movie shortly after, and I struggle with because I'm a guy, you know what I mean. It's hard for me to cook. I don't enjoy cooking like some people do. And obviously, there's nowhere to get healthy food. And it was probably 10 years ago, and my blood work was just horrible. And I just made one simple step that changed my whole life. Was just I just started eating one healthy meal a day. I made a 33% improvement by just eating a healthy breakfast, instead of, and it's mainly trying to stay away from gluten, dairy, and sugar for me. I'm at my best when I'm not consuming, when I'm aware of how much I'm doing without feeling I'm, starving myself from it. But, that's one thing I did for eating. If it's overwhelming, you don't want to change your, whole diet. But if you change one meal a day, that's a 33% improvement. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Start with just one thing you can do.
yeah, don't overwhelm yourself.
And it's a good idea to do breakfast too. Breakfast, if you did some breathing in the morning, early morning as part of a routine, and then had a healthy breakfast, maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And then you can gradually maybe expand it, but maybe just start,
So
breaths in the morning, healthy breakfast, and then,
awesome.
keep growing.
Well, Drew, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy this podcast with you, and
This was awesome.
look forward to the next one with you. And
Looking forward to it, Kurt. It's great to talk to you. I'm going to go back in the snow and jump around and do some breathing, I think, now.
you're in Massachusetts, right? And
I'm in Massachusetts. Yeah, we got hit with about a foot of snow the other couple days ago. So,
nice.
yeah, so, gotta embrace the cold.
Yeah, same here. All right.
It's great.
Thanks.
Okay, Kurt, great to see you today.
Have a great day.
All right, you too. You too, my friend.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.